Hey everyone, thanks for watching. I want to talk about one thing today that is kind of relates to some of the personal things that are kind of going on in my life and I've dealt with recently, and that is the truth about money. You know, whenever you think about homesteading and sustainability, living off the land or anything like that, something that doesn't necessarily get brought up a lot is money. And what is the value of money? Is it still valuable if I'm able to grow food on the land and grow vegetables and protein and stuff like that? Well, the truth is that there are certain things that you'll never be able to produce on any type of farm, and that is, you're not going to be able to produce taxes on the farm. You're going to have to produce something else and convert it to some type of currency. And so that's where the importance of money comes into place. Because, one thing that we always have to deal with, say property taxes. Uncle Sam's they're going to get their cut. I can't, I have to grow something and convert that to currency. And so then, because there's always going to be something that's going to require money. And so that's one thing that I feel like is really not talked about enough. People show the glamour side, the interesting side of a homestead, but they don't really show the backside and that backside is the fact that there are still things that have to be covered by money. And so regardless of what you do, money is still important. Now, the objective of a homestead is that you can reduce your dependency on money. And so therefore you don't have to have as much of it to survive from year to year. And so therefore in a certain degree it becomes less of a priority, because the less you need, the easier it could be to come by. So if you needed a really large amount of money, it's hard to come by that amount of money. This kind of roots back that I had someone recently tell me, well, money isn't everything. I 100% agree. Money is not everything. In fact, if you don't have good health, then what's the value of money? I think that good health, that is just as high ranking as money, But one thing that you really got to take into consideration is, or really the advice that I give is, with a homestead, you have to diversify. If you find a niche that makes you, is making you good profits, because regardless, it doesn't matter. With a homestead, people focus on, I can either produce something for my own consumption, or I can produce something and convert it to currency. And that's kind of the two things that you need to do. But there's a third part of that I actually give advice, and I say, look, you've got to diversify. The people that I have witnessed, and like I said, I've grown up in this type of lifestyle, really grown up in the farming industry, in the dairy industry, and the people that seem to kind of weather the storms the best were the ones that it was a husband and wife or something like that, and they're involved together in a farm, but typically one of them is going to work a part-time job in town that's not related to the farm. So what this does is that allows you to diversify. And so even if there's a problem with the farm, one thing that we're really involved with now is beef. And so in the beef business, you lose one aspect that is critical to any type of corporation or business in this country, and that's cash flow. So, and cash flow is that ability to get paid as often as possible. And so that really means, for a business, you want to get paid every day. Think about a store. A store is taking in money every day. They're doing exchanges every day. That is really important, because that way they can use that money and cover their daily, weekly, monthly expenses with those exchanges that are just happen routinely. So that's what cash flow is. You got to have that steady flow of income. Now, of course, for businesses, they like to get those really big purchases where they have good margins, and that's great. But any business, any legitimate business will tell you that cash flow is really the most important. Like, that's the first priority, is cash flow. In the beef business, we don't really have that cash flow, because in all honesty, you get paid one time a year. You get paid when you sell your calves. Say if our selling time is in the fall, then we will sell all of our calves in the fall, and we won't get paid again on the beef until the next fall, until you're doing the same thing. You're taking those calves back to market. So you don't have cash flow. You don't have something that could cover those, day-to-day expenses. So the importance there is that you need to either try to find something else that you can produce on your farm. But I will also, and that's where that third part of that advice is, I say, look, you really got to diversify, and you have to go off the farm and create some type of cash flow that's anything. And I'm not saying work a full-time job, but something so that if there's an issue with the farm, there's still this money source that's coming in. And and that's the benefit of really the homesteading, is that because you're reducing your dependence on money, you'll never be able to reduce it to zero. You're always going to have some type of money, because unfortunately our country is set up so that there are expenses that has to be paid with currency every year, and one of those is taxes. So you have to do that. And so you have to have that money. And so if you can get that from even if you work that part-time job and you can get a little bit, just a little bit goes a long way on a homestead if you minimize your spending. Now, another thing that I have witnessed is with people is they really get too involved on this separation from society, and they look at money as a bad thing. Money is really not a bad thing. We have to understand that if you have a perception that money is a bad thing, it's because you don't have money. If you had money, you wouldn't be saying it was a bad thing. Okay? So you got to change that. You got to address that, and you got to change that. Because I've seen people, they get into a bind because they can minimize their day-to-day, month-to-month expenses, but then they have an emergency that comes up. And what I have seen is medical emergencies. I have seen people that have really gotten some bad health. They wind up in a hospital, and what happens? And when they get out of the hospital, they were fortunate enough to be able to leave. Well, now they have a huge currency debt that they have to pay. And that's another thing that you really got to look out for. You can't, you really can't produce everything you need on the farm. You have to be able to really, the most important thing is you have to have that conversion. And that conversion is really good if you can take goods that you produce on the farm, convert that to currency. That's a great way to do it. Another thing is, okay, so you have things that you can produce on the farm for your own consumption. That's great, because that's reducing your dependency on money. But the third thing is you really need to have some type of connection to the outside world off of your farm. You need to have something outside of the boundaries of your farm that's going to produce you some type of cash flow. And that's a safety net. So if something happens, you can fall back on that safety net, and what it'll do, it'll get you out of a hole. Because I have seen there's people that have literally, I have witnessed people that have lost everything, and it's because they got too dependent. And it's because they got too dependent on one thing. And whenever that one thing fell apart, and in some cases it's the medical emergency that throws them off the edge, and they can't recover, and they lose their farm and they're starting over. I know people right now, they're going through the same thing. I mean, they're at a stage where, you know, they have a deadline. They're going to have to come up with the money somehow, you know, and so if not, the alternative is that, you know, unfortunately things operate differently with a farm, and if you don't pay a debt that's associated with that farm, they will take you to court and force you to sell your land. So I mean, literally, I know people that they're at a point where they're in just a couple months, they're going to have a court date where a judge is going to literally look at their assets and say, you need to sell this portion of land to pay this debt. And so if they were drawing a cash flow from an outside source and off of the farm, they probably wouldn't have had this issue. So so money is still very important. I mean, you cannot live your life in the United States. You cannot live your life without money. If you think that you're living without money, you're really not. You're living off of somebody else's money. And so that means, like, well, yeah, you go to a hospital, maybe you get free health care. Somebody else paid for that, you know. There's no way that you're living on a piece of land and you're not paying something for it in taxes every year. If you're not, then it's not your piece of land. You know, it obviously belongs to someone else. So there's some really important things. So really don't suppress the importance of money. Really what you want to do is suppress your dependency on money. And then once you get that at a contained level, at a very low level, it's not that hard to make sure you meet those demands on a yearly basis, weekly basis, you know, monthly basis, whatever. You know, that way you can still go and buy certain goods from the store. Because I mean, I don't know anyone that's completely 100% independent. You know, from anything to do with, you know, from going to the stores or something like that. You know, even if they think that they are, the fact is that they're not, because it's the same people that lost everything they had. You know, and so you really got to watch that. You know, it's don't undercut the importance of money. So if you're gonna live this lifestyle, use this lifestyle to reduce your cost of living. You're still going to have to try to generate income. People that do well at homesteading are very creative at converting goods to currency. Those are people that do really well at this. And there are some people that are very creative. And if homesteading is something that you're interested in, search out those people and find what they do and these things that they're doing to make that conversion. I find, I mean, there's really a broad array of things that people do, and it is that they pay close attention to their local market, and they see what are people in their area willing to purchase. And you know, everybody kind of falls back to the easy things, and that's like the eggs or things like that, or you know, the produce. You're going to run into a lot of competition, and the honest truth is, I mean, I'll tell you point blank, you'll never get paid what that produce is really worth to you. You know, you understand what I'm saying? Is that it's definitely worth more to you than what people are going to be willing to pay for it, because you're going to work so hard to produce it. And so it can be done. Just work on the fact of that. Make sure you have that conversion. You always have that. So even whenever you're producing more, say you're producing stuff for your consumption, you always want to produce more so that you can go ahead and try to convert that to currency. And so you always want to produce in abundance, and then you try to convert that, and that'll really help you out, and you can make a little more money that way. So hopefully this helped out. I really wanted to talk about something that's just never really addressed, and that is the importance of money. And the fact is, regardless of where you live, if you live in the United States, it's still important. There's certain things that the government has set up in a particular way that you will always be connected to the system, okay? And that system means you're always going to have to produce some type of income, which is going to create some type of tax debt that you're going to have to pay. There's always going to be something.